Let's put some emphasis on the humble U-bolt, a very important part of the suspension, because if you have a leaf spring suspension, the U-bolts hold your leaf springs onto the differential of your vehicle, and your differential houses the axles which your wheels are bolted to, and they're good mates for tyres, hold you to the road. Important, aren't they? But when spring repair or replacement is necessary, some people give U-bolts little thought because they are planning to save $1 and just use the old ones, which sounds like a plan until the old U-bolts are seized on and have to be cut off when removing the springs for repairs or replacement. The old U-bolts break or snap under the force used to undo the nuts, or the U-bolt threads are damaged when the nuts are removed, and if reused, keeping the nut tight after reassembling cannot be guaranteed, and loose U-bolts will void a new spring warranty. Or, oops, forgot that the stronger and therefore thicker leaf spring pack is now being used, so my old U-bolts aren't long enough. Rest assured your disappointment will be amplified if you are doing the job on the weekend when everything is closed, or if you are a long way from the supplier. So to avoid being disappointed by any of these possibilities, let's just say it is a wise practice to replace the U-bolts when a spring removal or replacement has been done. It is also recommended that the U-bolts be retensioned 7 to 10 days after installation, as the spring settles into position and any initial stretching of the U-bolt threads has occurred. The retention will ensure the leaf spring remains firmly secured and is not allowed to rock in place, causing unwanted spring flex in the middle of the spring, which can cause leaf breakages to occur. Loose U-bolts can also cause a leaf spring to walk out of position, which will damage your centre bolt and affect the alignment of the vehicle. Remember, centre bolts hold the spring together for assembly and help locate the spring onto the axle in the correct position. Correctly tightened U-bolts are what holds the spring firmly in place on the vehicle when driving. So now that you know why you need to replace the U-bolts, let's have a look at what we need to know about the U-bolt when we are ordering new ones. Most times just supplying the vehicle make, model and year will be enough. Other times the vehicle or spring specifications have changed and you need to describe the physical properties of the U-bolt. So let's get started. What shape is the U-bolt? The middle of the U-bolt will be formed to go over or under the differential or the mount plate, and it will most times be one of a few basic shapes: square, round, or semi-round. Pay particular attention to the difference between round and semi-round. Seen together, it is much easier to tell the difference. See that the round one is almost a perfect semicircle shape, whilst the semi-round one has only a slight arch. Further variety exists still if the shape has been forged from round material to be flat, so we then have square forged, round forged, or semi-round forged. There are also some semi-round designs that are vehicle make, model specific, and special dies are required to achieve these shapes, but they are not so common. What size material has been used? The material used to make the U-bolt will be round because the end of the U-bolt needs to have a nut thread on it. Clever, ain't it? So when you are asked what material, you will need to measure the diameter of the rod at the thread. This is because most U-bolt threads are rolled, not cut, and the rolling process will make the thread measure as a bigger diameter than the rod itself. And if you need nuts to suit, measure the thread size, not simply the rod size. What is the inside measurement of the U-bolt? This measurement is critical because it must be the correct width to go over the diff housing or spring pack. Too narrow obviously won't fit on, and too wide won't secure the spring correctly, or fit into the holes of the spring mount, cradle or plate. Measure from the inside of one U-bolt leg across to the other. Always measure at the shaped end of the U-bolt, as the legs of the U-bolt may spread during removal and give you a larger and incorrect reading. What length are the legs of the U-bolt? When measuring the leg length of your U-bolt, always measure from the underside of the material at the top down to the end of the leg. Now don't forget that this is the measurement of the U-bolt you have now, and you may need to order longer ones if you are adding a packer plate or extra leaf to your spring to add height or strength. It's a good tip to have a peek how much thread is sticking out of your original U-bolts before you take them off, so you know if your new ones will need to be longer once you have done your additions. Remember that you must have a full nut plus 2 threads extra on the thread of your U-bolt exposed after the nut. Any less and the nuts could work loose. And if you do replace your U-bolts, Give them a retighten approximately 7 days after to make sure any initial settling of the spring in U-bolts has occurred. U-bolts must be tight or problems will occur. How much thread does your U-bolt have on each leg? Most of the time the length of the thread is relevant to the length of the leg, with plenty to spare, but if you ask for it, know where to measure. What grade material should the U-bolts be made of? This is not normally something you'll need to stipulate. Usually the supplier will know relevant to material size what the standard requirement is. Some of the smaller 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive U-bolts are equivalent to grade 5, whereas the big heavy U-bolts are supplied as grade 8. What if the U-bolts I need aren't available off the shelf? Many suspension suppliers and installers have a U-bolt bending machine on site. With the use of one of these machines, a U-bolt blank can be selected considering the material size, width and length you need, and bent to the shape or form stipulated for the top of the U-bolt. It is then a case of selecting the right die to form the shape needed to make your U-bolt. Individual machines will have limitations on the diameter of rod they can bend. Please remember that threaded rod blanks are a cold bend steel material, and it is a definite no-no to use heat on the threaded rod blank to help with the bend. Using heat can cause a reduction in strength or failure of the U-bolt. Well, hopefully that tells you enough so you can talk U-bolt language when asked, and you can order your U-bolts without too much difficulty. So until next time, bye for now.